You want to get better at screenwriting, but here's the thing. Merely writing isn't enough. Yes, if you're writing regularly, you do get better because writing is a craft that must be practiced, must be honed, and the practice does help you get better. But the issue is the same as it is with every other craft. If you want to get better at it, you have to devote focused attention to specific areas. Those of you who watch this channel regularly know I love soccer, and in fact, I used to coach soccer. Boys, girls, all-star teams, and even high school ball. At every level though, all players want to do is just play the game. And of course this is true because playing in a game is a lot of fun. It's like writing a script. Writing's a lot of fun. But if you only show up to play and you never practice, you're in trouble. If you don't devote focused attention to specific areas like fitness, so you can run for 90 minutes, or things like ball handling or other techniques like passing or shooting, learning about strategy, you might enjoy playing, but you're never gonna be great at it. If you want to be great, you've got to devote some focused attention. Just showing up to play or just showing up to write is not enough. And as we end 2021, and as many of you are probably thinking about areas to improve in for the next year, I wanted to give you 5 categories or buckets for improvement in your screenwriting endeavors. These are just big sandboxes that you need to regularly spend time in to hone and improve both your craft and you as a writer. And I bet that at least one of these buckets for you has been neglected more than the others. So here's a chance for you to reflect and figure out not just the, I want to write 3 screenplays next year kind of resolution, but for you to make sure that your entire screenwriting and screenwriter life is moving where you want it to be. And not all of them, by the way, include writing. Category 1 though, it does. Story tools. I'm sure you're able to recognize a good story. You've been watching and reading them since you were little, and you love stories, especially the good ones. But do you know how stories actually work? Do you know what makes them tick? Do you know what you need and what you don't, and what makes a good one? And if you don't, you've got to learn. And yes, you'll hear people say, don't worry about all that stuff, just write, which is fine to a point, but how do you know if you're doing it correctly? How do you know even if your story is working, that you have all the pieces if you don't even know what all the pieces are? And I'm not just talking about identifying the parts of story that you might have heard, things like inciting incident, plot point 1, culmination, things like that. I'm also talking about things like character want and character need, about how to use time to generate conflict and what types of conflict you have available and how to properly arc a character, and a host of other story tools that help you craft a complete and cohesive and coherent story. But if you just sit down and start writing without ever focusing some specific attention on learning story tools, you're gonna spend your time floundering and being frustrated because your stories aren't working, and you won't know why. And worse, you won't know how to fix them. So if you want to get better at the craft of screenwriting, you have to take some focused time to learn about the basics, the tools, the fundamentals. You can watch videos on YouTube. I have several that talk about story tools. You can read books, you can take an online course, you can do a lot of things, but you have to spend some dedicated time to learning the craft of story. If you don't, you're just wasting your time. But learning story tools isn't enough. Once you learn what a story is and how to craft one, well, now you have to learn how to tell that story. And that's category number 2, storytelling tools. Storytelling is everything related to the audience and how the audience experiences the story that you're telling. In a sense, you have to think of your storytelling as an invitation to an audience to participate in the story. And you want them participating in the story. You want them feeling emotions and empathizing with characters, rooting for outcomes and fearing the dangers that lurk around corners and in dark shadows. Participation is the goal. You can probably think of times where you were fully invested in a movie you were watching because you were participating in it. And I'm sure there have also been times when you were just watching a movie. Watching isn't participating. Feeling is participating. And you want your audience to feel things, primarily hope and fear, because those are the 2 emotions that make stories go. If an audience hopes for something and fears for its opposite, okay, you've got a story. But as soon as those 2 things are resolved, that one is totally gone, so all hope is lost or all fear is alleviated, okay, the story is over for the audience. And one thing you must learn to get good at is how to engage the audience through storytelling and in using the tools of storytelling to do so. Now, some of these tools you've heard of, things like dramatic irony, plant and payoff, and maybe even tools of advertising or elements of the future. But there are others that you probably haven't thought of or that you don't even realize are storytelling tools. Things like screenplay format and grammar. Those help you tell the story. They are storytelling tools. And there are even specialty tools on top of that you can use in specific situations to milk emotion out of an audience. So if you aren't familiar with the storytelling tools at your disposal, you must spend some focused time learning about them and practicing using them. Now, ideally what you want is when you're telling a story for the screen, you should have a good idea at how an audience should be feeling along the way. Oh, at this moment, the audience is gonna be sad or nervous or excited or relieved. And then your script needs to reflect those emotions. The words you choose when you write are not only conveying the story, because you've still got the story you're communicating, but the way you're telling it, choosing the right words, you are conveying the emotions that you're imagining the audience will be feeling at that moment. Audiences want to go on a ride, on an adventure, on an experience as a participant, and the story itself doesn't do that. The storytelling is what keeps people hooked. So when you're writing a screenplay, you are wanting to craft a solid story, and you're wanting to tell it well. So those have to be the first two categories of things you focus on. And in the coming year, if you want to improve your screenwriting abilities, do some things to focus specific attention to these two areas. If you've not done that before and you spend this next year working on those things, you will see a massive improvement in your screenwriting. But at some point, you want that screenplay, that story, to get shot, to get made into a film that people fork over some money to go and see. And that leads us to the next category that you can work on, the filmmaking process. So you can have a great story and you can tell it in an awesome way, but let's just jump forward a bit and imagine that you've now sold that screenplay that you wrote. What happens next? Do you know what the next step in the process is? Do you know who gets hired first? Do you know how they get hired or what they're looking for in the script if they're going to agree to sign on to it? And what about the actors? I mean, how do they get brought in? Part of your job as a screenwriter is to help everyone else involved in the filmmaking process do their job better. You are to enhance their job, to give them opportunities to shine. But if you don't know how the process works, if you don't know who does what and what information they need to do it, you're gonna have a hard time getting that script sold. So you have to learn the process. And whether you do that on your own by writing something small, shooting it with your phone, editing it, sound designing it, color correcting it, and showing it to friends, or whether you find a way to get on an actual film set and see what people do and learn what they're doing or everything in between, you've still got to learn it somewhere. I mean, can you learn by watching videos and reading books? Well, sure you can, but why not learn in person if you're able to do so? So take an acting class, take a directing class, take an editing class, fill in the gaps you have and learn how the filmmaking process works. It doesn't mean you have to get good at it. It does mean you have to learn how it works and do some research. I mean, learn what all the jobs are in the credits of your favorite film. What does a key grip actually do? What does a production designer do? And how can you enhance their jobs in your script? Some roles in the credits you won't really interact with at all, but a screenplay is a blueprint for a movie. And everyone in the credits is working on the movie that you are writing. So do everything you can to honor and enhance their job. And probably the most important element you'll learn from all of this is not what you need to include in your screenplay, but what you don't need to include in your screenplay. The next category of things to work on is going to feel a little out of order. I mean, if you reflect thus far, we are really talking about categories of things that you need to know, and each category actually kind of builds on the previous one. Learning the tools of storytelling, our second category, that's irrelevant if you don't know what a story is in the first place, our first category. And if you can tell a solid story, so I know what a story is and I can tell it well, but you don't know how your words are going to impact others down the road, you're kind of getting ahead of yourself. And again, that's not to say you have to be an expert on each category before moving to the next one, because you're going to kind of float in between all of these. But it does mean if you start at the end without devoting some focused attention at the earlier categories, you're making it harder on yourself. And you don't really need to. So this category is really the last one that you're going to implement, but you have to understand some of the key components on it before we get to our last category. So this category, I'm just calling the system. Now the system is the part of the process that revolves around between the time that people read your script and become interested in you as a writer, through the time that you actually sell the script. So everything in between when people become interested to the time you sell your script. And the system category includes things like how to network and interact with Hollywood people, and not just any people, but the right ones. How to pitch a project, how to take a meeting. And this is the important part. What is the proper etiquette along the way. New screenwriters think it's totally cool to finally get in touch with a writer or a producer or whatever, and then they just like flat out, hey, can you read my script? And then give it to an agent because they're gonna love it. No. Or they think it's cool to ask something like, hey, can I get your contacts in the industry? No. Or a new writer just decides to start trash talking others in the industry. Oh, no. This is a small industry. People talk, and new writers who don't follow etiquette guidelines and expectations are quickly marginalized and have a hard time making any progress as a writer. Now for this one, especially if you're new, you'll need to begin haunting online groups and just kind of lurking and reading about how others are going about accomplishing their goals and meeting other people. And remember, this is a business. You must have something to offer. An idea? Oh, I've got this great idea for a movie. Everybody's got a great idea for a movie. An idea is nothing to offer. A skill? You can offer that. A completed script? That's something to offer. Some other resources that you bring to bear? Those are things to offer. You get meetings because you are a writer who can deliver solid stories. You get pitch meetings because you've proven yourself. You've sold things. And the producers on the other side of the table know you write great things. You get to interact with others because they know you aren't asking for favors or handouts. Be yourself. Know who you are and know what you can deliver. And that will help you navigate the sometimes choppy waters of the system. But this is definitely a category you've got to spend some time working on if you want to improve as a screenwriter. The category I'm mentioning as number 5 here is actually kind of comes before the one I just mentioned, so maybe I should renumber these, but whatever. So the thing that comes before the system is something every writer I know, practically every writer I know, they just hate. And that's the category of marketing. Marketing yourself, marketing your script, because before anyone reads what you have, they have to know that you exist. And the only way they're gonna know if you exist is if you put yourself out there. And if you have a product worth being put out there. Now, a lot of writers make the mistake of marketing a script that isn't ready. It's their first script and they love it, or it's a passion project or something like that, and they think others are gonna love it just as much as they do. So the first part of the marketing category is that you have to learn how to write things that could actually sell, not the things you think are gonna sell. Those are two very different things. And to do that, you have to know the difference between a good idea and a great one. You have to know what to include that would attract top-tier talent, actors, directors, and producers, because if you learn the process category and the system category that we've kind of talked about already, you'll know that if you can attract 2 or 3 of those key people, an actor, a director, or a producer, to your project, if you can attract 2 of the 3, there is a high chance it's gonna get made. Not just bought, but made. In other words, if you write a solid script that gets the attention of Michael Bay and Sandy Bullock, you're selling your script. And not only that, it's gonna get made. Does that mean that every script has to have a Michael Bay level of explosions? Well, no, but you need 2 or 3 people to be interested in your story. And do you know the components to include to entice those people to participate in your story? But you also have to know how to write to budget, and you have to have a distinctive voice in your storytelling that is yours and yours alone. And on top of that, you have to learn about query letters and how to pass your script to others in a proper and professional way using etiquette principles so you're not offending anyone and they're not sidelining you. And that's just for the script. You've also got to learn how to market you. Who are you? I mean, what makes you different from every other writer out there? Why are you not only the best person to tell this story, but why are you the only person who could tell this story that you're trying to sell? Because when you become a screenwriter, you aren't just selling scripts, you're selling you. People are buying you along with the script. You are a commodity, and you have to learn how to market yourself in a way that's not arrogant, but that's genuine and real. So those are the 5 categories you need to be spending some dedicated time in if you want to get better as a screenwriter. And again, they do build on one another. So if you're doing something in category 4 or 5, make sure you're spending time in 1, 2, and 3. But I also want to take a moment and talk about upcoming plans for me and for this channel. 2 things specifically. First, I have over the past year released a new video every Monday and Thursday, and I've had a ball doing that. I love the feedback I've gotten from you. I love that our community is growing, now over 700 subscribers, which is amazing to me, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it. At the same time, the schedule I've been keeping, along with my screenwriting fast track course, my coaching program, the Screenplay Navigator, which I also love doing both of those, and on top of this schedule and in dealing with things surrounding my wife's health, that pace is just taxing me a little, and I need to step back a couple of steps. Not many, just a little. One, so I can have more time to actually write, and two, so I can do a few other things that I'm wanting to do in helping you learn the craft, which I'll of course be sharing once they're ready. So for at least the first part of 2022, and then I'll see how things are going, I'll reevaluate later, I'm gonna experiment with only releasing one video a week every Monday. I will more than likely though have additional videos that aren't on Mondays as I can do them. For example, I'm hoping to start some live Q&A sessions later next year, and I'm hoping to do a few interviews with some writers and other people that I think you'll find interesting, and that will help you learn to be a better screenwriter. And I'm going to be working on another book and finishing the revisions for the expansion of the Complete Guide to Story Structure, which is free until January 1st, 2022. So if you haven't gotten it, be sure you get it, because after January 1st, it's gonna have a cost attached to it. So I've just got a lot of irons in the fire. But to do those things, something just has to give. And ultimately, I think the things I'm planning are going to prove just as or more helpful to you and to others who are on the screenwriting journey. So I'm experimenting with one video a week for the coming year, and then we'll reevaluate at some point and just kind of see what modifications that schedule I might need to make. Second, I need your help. And no, I don't just mean in liking and subscribing, although I do appreciate you doing that if you haven't already, but I need your help in a more significant way. And this is also why I'm making some more time in my schedule. Right now, I do a few things through my learning portal, and they are the things I wish I would have had access to when I was starting out. I needed feedback on my scripts from someone I could trust, so I do script consultations. I needed to learn and practice the fundamentals of story and storytelling, giving some focused attention, like I talked about earlier, to those categories. And you can do that in the Screenwriting Fast Track course. And I needed to hone my process so I could learn to write marketable scripts that could sell, because I wanted to tell effective stories that matter to a world that needs to hear them. And so I created the Screenplay Navigator coaching program. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you some success stories over the coming year of students currently participating in those experiences. But on top of that, I just want to hear from you. I started on the screenwriting journey many years ago. In fact, the internet wasn't even a thing when I started. There was like 5 screenwriting books total. And while I have taught a lot of students how to tell stories and write screenplays over the years, I rely on, need, and covet feedback from you. And I want to make sure that I'm helping you where I can and where you need the help. So I'm shooting for the moon here. So I'm kind of going crazy. I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm trying. I think though, you all are up to the challenge because you all are awesome, and I think we can do this together. I wanna have a 30-minute Zoom conversation with 50 of you for the sole purpose of just listening to you and learning where you're at in your journey. What you think you need, what's some helps that you want, what are some things you'd like me to cover on the channel, just what are some other things? How can I be of help? I'm literally going to be asking questions like, where are you at? What do you need? Where do you want to go over the next year? What are some of the goals you have? And in that call, I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have as time allows, but I'm gonna honor your time and the time of those who want to participate by keeping those calls to 30 minutes. So if you're interested in helping me out and giving up 30 minutes of your time to just talk with me about where you're at on the screenwriting journey, I would love that. Below is a link for 30 minutes with Jake, and it'll take you to a page where you can register for a call on Zoom. There'll be a bunch of dates and times, and you can pick one that works for you. My goal is to speak with 50 of you in the month of January. So if you're willing and able, I would love to chat with you. And last, as we end 2021, thank you for journeying with me this past year, for joining me in the journey. Screenwriting is not an easy craft to learn or to master, but stories are powerful things that can change the lives of other people. So as you make goals for yourself for the coming year, make sure you are improving yourself in some or all of the categories that I noted: story, storytelling, the filmmaking process, the system, and marketing. If you really want to get better, you have to devote some focused attention to learning and practicing specific elements of the craft. And of course, you have to be writing screenplays. Of course you do. But that's the game on the field. These are the things you have to practice off the field. And if you spend some dedicated time focusing on specific things, you're going to get better. And 2022 is going to be a great year for you and the screenwriter in you. Ultimately, I just want to help you be a better writer and storyteller. And if you found any value and you haven't already, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all of that. I really do appreciate it. And when you go to tell a story, be sure you tell a story that matters. See you later.